Hi everyone, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and I am excited to be back again and back into the world of the Next Generation numbered series of novels. It has been a while since I've dove into them. I stopped back at 25 and was excited to jump back into number 26, the Romulan Prize, which is the new novel by Simon Hawke. And I looked into Mr. Hawke a little bit, and he has written only 3 TNG novels, and this looks to be the second. He wrote a TOS novel, The Patreon Transgression, and then he wrote TNG number 34, Blaze of Glory. So, looking forward to that because he did a fantastic job with the Romulan Prize here. So, let's see what the back has to say. Hermeticus II, a planet so shrouded in secrecy that few in the Federation even know of its existence. When a Romulan spy learns of the world, it becomes the centerpiece of a far-reaching Romulan plan. On a routine patrol near the border of the neutral zone, the Starship Enterprise discovers an advanced Romulan warbird prototype drifting lifeless in space. Investigating the vessel, Captain Picard is drawn into a plot that threatens the very foundation of the Federation. Now, with time running out, Captain Picard and the crew of the USS Enterprise must stop the Romulans before the deadly secret of Hermeticus II overwhelms them all. Alright, that was a pretty good back. Didn't really give anything away, and kind of brought a little bit of excitement to the reader there. So, now, this book, I guess what I like a lot about these TNG numbered novels is that they, to me, it's like I'm reading a lost episode of TNG, you know? And that's, I think, what I really get into these the most about. So, this book does that very well. So what you have is I would say it would be a very good, like, 2-part episode. That's how I was kind of imagining it as I was reading it here. And lots of ups and downs. And we'll say this part of the review is like the spoiler-free part, where I'll just kind of go over like the basics of the story. So it draws you in right away, and you're like left immediately like, wow, how are they gonna get out of this mess, kind of thing. And of course they do get out of it. You know, they work their way through it, of course. But just done in such a very interesting and, I don't know, this is just a perfect TNG way, I guess you could say. Doesn't feature any one character any more than another, really. I mean, seems like mostly everybody in the main TNG cast gets a little bit of a shot. You know, typically like your basic kind of episode, you know. So of course maybe you got more focus on Picard than anyone else, but that's just because he's the captain, you know. But other than that, it's a good ensemble book where you have kind of a little bit of everybody getting a little bit of the action. And a very interesting antagonist, too, with Commander Valek, the Romulan featured on the cover over there. Side note, they do feature on the cover Didierdix, I'm probably not saying that right, class Romulan ship. But in this book, they are not facing off against that. They are facing off against a new, larger, more advanced, and I think they say it's something like twice the size of one of these. And this is called the Kazanak ship. But anyway, let's just kind of jump right into the story. It starts out with Captain Picard having, Troy sensing something wrong. Captain Picard having a premonition, basically. And she races to his room, and where he's like, you know, I've had these things a few times in my life, and each time they've worked out to be true. So they kind of just kind of leading in like something terrible is going to happen, you know. And then it switches right over to introducing you to Commander Valek, the antagonist, who's been drawn in, or called into a meeting with the Praetor, Lord Derek of Romulus, and he is assigning him a fantastic opportunity. Basically, he gets to test out a new class of ship, larger and like more powerful, been built in secret, and this is the Kazanak class ship. Now, all of his crew has already been transferred aboard, And the designer of the ship, Lord Kazanak, who's like the son of a noble, will be coming along with them to test and go along with this mission. And they don't tell you anything more about it, and they just kind of leave it at that. And then in the next chapter, chapter 2, they jump right back into the Enterprise with Ensign Rowe picking up a distress call, a Romulan distress call near the border of the neutral zone in the Federation side. So they get there and they find this massive new warship drifting lifeless in space. The life support systems have been completely blown out, and when they beam over in their EV suits, they find the crew completely dead. And upon investigation, it appears that just basically some kind of glitch happened, and the life support systems immediately evacuated themselves. So, I mean, they have the doctor over there, and she examines everybody, and it's pretty clear that everyone was dead, and from the way they died, they suffocated. So, they kind of see this as a rare opportunity, but Captain Picard still has that kind of like nagging feeling like, well, this is all just too easy. Like there's something more going on here. And even I was like, yeah, this is way too easy. There's totally some kind of setup. There's definitely something more going on here. So at this point in the story, Picard decides to beam over himself and check out the vessel. And this is when the Romulans enact their plan. And they kind of all at once jump up and come to life. And at the same time, there's like a pre-programmed transporter program that transports Romulan boarding parties aboard the Enterprise into key locations. Like, basically, it is the absolute perfect setup. And it worked and went off without a hitch. And the Romulans come off in total and complete control of the Enterprise. Like, in a matter of moments, it's over. Like, they have complete control, and they're done. They've taken... So they have the captain hostage there on the Romulan ship. They've taken the bridge. They've taken engineering. And they've taken... basically started moving groups of hostages already together on the Enterprise. So, like, and this is just, like, the third chapter in the book, and already it's like, wow. So basically they've lost it. Like, that's it. Like, they could just fly them back to Romulan space, claim the Enterprise, and that's the end. But that is not the mission altogether. Their actual mission is they're trying to find out more about this secret quarantined planet called Hermeticus 2, which one of their spies was able to pull out of like Starfleet records. So we'll pause here for a minute, because this is where the author ties into the TV show, which I always love when they do. And they like, this is kind of like a spin-off of an idea of something that happened on the show that, was never developed any further along. So this is about the episode Data's Day, which is a very fun episode, but the main plot is that a Vulcan ambassador is going to treat with the Romulans to possibly come to some kind of diplomatic terms. She is killed in a transporter accident, but then it's later found out that the whole time she was a Romulan agent all along. And it's revealed here in this book that she was sent in to basically find out what she could, and she was the agent that found out about this Hermeticus 2. So, and then she was also able to obtain a very rare Starfleet data rod, which at this point Lord Valek shows Picard that he has, and he attempts to use it to access the Enterprise computers to find out all the information on Hermeticus 2. So as soon as he does that, Picard realizes, oh, the jig is up. He uses some kind of advanced voice override to delete all that data from the computer, but not before the Romulan commander is able to find the location of the planet. Nothing else was given up, but now he knows where it is. So he's been ordered by the Praetor to discover what this is. It's a location that's in the neutral zone, so the Romulans, of course, suspicious, think that the Federation has set up some sort of base there, an advanced base in preparation for an invasion. So his mission is to investigate that. So he begins to, well, first what he does, he separates the Enterprise crew and moves a portion of them over to the his ship is called the Steerix, I believe. So he moves a portion of them over to the Steerix, and then so you've got some of the main characters over there like Worf, O'Brien, and then they and they take them all over there in the Enterprise's own shuttles. That'll be important later, and then they leave basically Riker in command on the bridge with Valek's second in command, Korak, with him, while Commander Valek, and Valek is kind of a weird Romulan. He is someone who is studied in like human culture, and he kind of takes it as a point of pride that he knows all about humans and he knows all about the Enterprise and Picard, and like he kind of takes it as like this his reason or his planning was the reason everything worked so well on this plan, and he sees this as almost like a chess match versus Picard. And even though Picard is like, well, looks like you've already won with the first move, Valek is, well, like, no, I've made a first move, I've made a huge opening gambit, but, you still have moves to make. So there's this kind of interesting dynamic there, and then Picard kind of sees then that the weakness that he can play upon here is this commander's ego. And he sees that that's kind of like his plan to kind of like slowly pick away at his ego, throughout their interactions here. So he puts Picard on his ship in his first officer's quarters, trying to treat him like a dignified prisoner. And they're treating all the prisoners well. Like there's no issues with that so far. I don't think there's been any casualties at all. I mean, everything happened so fast. Everything was just kind of captured and taken over. So they set course for Helmeticus. And this is about chapter 5 here. And wait. Before they get there, they give you like, because the whole, like right now, this whole point, you're kind of on like a little bit of a downer. Everything's kind of been like a downer. So you're seeing like the Romulans enact their plan perfectly. But you see Picard, he's starting to maybe figure things out. But then Riker, on his side, is doing his part to figure things out too. And that's like one of the great parts about this novel is like each officer is kind of like playing their part to do what they need to do. Riker's part is that he is on the bridge with Korak, the Romulan first officer, and he has noticed that Korak has a bit of like a short temper. So he's going to find a way to goad him into making some kind of mistake, which is exactly what he does. He basically kind of keeps picking at him until he gets him to agree to go fight him on the holodeck. And when they go fight on the holodeck, the Romulan Korak, he thinks, well, I'm bigger and stronger. He kind of just moves to immediately grip him, crush him, and like throw him or something. But Riker, trained in jujitsu and aikido, is able to use his opponent's strength against him and bests Korak in the holodeck. And even worse for him, humiliates him in front of some of his men. So it kind of gives like this little upturn there at the end, where now, even though Riker took a beating from this guy, in the end was able to kind of show him up, and it kind of show that he has this flaw. So there's like right at the end, you're kind of like, okay, so they're starting to turn things around here. So now we get a whole another interesting chapter to this book, which is the mystery of what is this Helmeticus 2 planet, which has been basically redacted in Starfleet records and has been set with like an advanced level quarantine so that nobody should ever go near it. Now when they arrive at the planet, what they find is a Constitution class USS Independence, reported lost and destroyed 30 years ago. The story is that it was just a shuttlecraft that was recovered with maybe like the captain and 3 other officers. They were all dead by the time it was recovered, and that was pretty much all that was known since the quarantine was put in effect, and no more information was given about this. Now the Romulan commander, he sees this as an obvious gotcha moment. He's like, well, look at this, Picard. Look, you do have Federation's base here. And Picard's like the whole time, like, well, no, I don't know anything about this. And look at that, it's an old ship and it's powered down. They go over there and they determine that it is indeed abandoned, completely powered down, all the power cells even removed from the thing, and nothing there, no bodies, no sign of anything else. So after a little bit more scanning, they determine that what they're looking at is not a planet at all. It is actually a multi-generational Ark ship. So what are they going to do? They got to beam inside of it, right? So the commander determines that they're going to send down first a team consisting of mostly like Enterprise officers. So Ro, Dr. Crusher, Counselor Troy, Data, and then their chief tactical officer, Karad, the Romulan officer, beam down to check the place out. And the description of it sounds, I mean, really amazing, of course. And one of the things I've always loved about, excuse me, Trek books in general is just the imagining of these great sci-fi structures. You know, when they talk about these giant arcs and these Dyson spheres and these huge ships. But this is a giant arc, you know, with everything built on the inside. So when they first beam in, they're disoriented. You know, they look up and miles above them they can see like the other side of the arc with all the buildings and stuff up there. So when you're kind of getting the feeling that you look up, you're gonna fall to the other side. So very cool. They start exploring it, and it's just it's different to them. It's kind of made up of like mostly like cubes kind of stacked on top of each other and things like that. They do notice like an arch for an entrance for a place, so they go inside. And they kind of go into like a large expanding hall area, and they notice various kind of like statues with other weird different shapes and things like that. No signs of life or anything like that. Just these kind of weird empty buildings. But upon going in there, they realize that they are now lost. When they retrace their steps to where the door is, the door has disappeared. So now they are stuck in this maze. They're getting in there. There we go. They've been in there for, I think, this maybe a little bit, like they're getting on into night now. They beamed down in the day. They're getting on into night now. The Romulan officer there is kind of fed up. He's had enough, and he goes off by himself and immediately gets disappeared and is gone from the story. And the rest of them kind of determine that maybe there's something more going on here. So they let's see, where do we get here? Oh, they feel that maybe there's an advanced technology. They theorize that possibly some kind of like nanotech is in place here to change the doors back into a wall and that kind of thing. So they're stuck in the maze. Karad is gone. Nobody can contact them from the ship. But back on the ship, the other members of the crew, of course, are not just going to sit idly by and give up hope. So Riker and Geordi hatch a plan. A bad plan. Well, it sounds not very fun, but basically, Riker's in his quarters, and Geordi is able to kind of rig through the lights and do some Morse code to set up a plan. Geordi then wriggles his way through the vents to his quarters during like the night shift when they're supposed to be sleeping, with this crazy plan to get some EV suits, get a short team together from like his engineering crew. Everybody wriggles through the ventilation tubes at night, get to an airlock, EV walk over to the Independence and check their weapons lockers for some phasers. Because if they have some phasers, they can bring them back and they could charge them up, and then they could mount their assault against the Romulans that have overtaken the ship. Like, well, that is a cool plan, right? Like, I mean, like, for real, that is good. And Riker's like, yeah, that's a good plan. So that's what they're going to go with, and that's what that side of the crew is going with. So at this point, back on the Steerix, Valek is kind of getting upset. He's lost contact with his crew there on the planet, and he decides that he's going to beam down with his own team along with Picard. So they beam down to the planet as well, and once they beam down, they start to notice like more weird things happening. So like they'll see someone off in the distance, and like a part of their team will get drawn away, and then part of them will disappear. So he is losing team members here, there, and all over the place, and just over like the period of these chapters is kind of like falling apart. And he's lost like maybe like 30 to 50 of his own team members, and just really has no handle on the situation anymore. And he's kind of gone from this confident commander, and he's just kind of cracking, more and more and more as he's losing control of the situation as things have come down here. Now, back over on the Steerix, they have all the Enterprise hostages tucked away into their shuttle bay. So if there's any trouble, they can just blow open the doors and shoot them all into space. O'Brien is trying to convince Worf they need to do something. Worf, of course, wants to do something, but as the senior officer has to think of the children and all the other people. But they kind of talk and they convince, it's time to do something. And they all agree to enact this plan where one of the young officers, Tyler, will jury-rig the panel for the doors so that they are able to control the doors themselves, load themselves into the shuttlecrafts, open the doors, and get the heck out of the place. And also use the shuttlecrafts to kind of bar the doors and protect themselves from any Romulans coming in. So that's the plan that they're going to go with. And they all agree it's a good plan, and they're going to go with it. Where are we at now? Boy, this is a good book. It really is. Back on the planet now, you have, of course, Ro, Data, Crusher, and Troy. It's nighttime, so they've kind of settled down for the night in the maze they're stuck in. But now they are greeted by someone finally to explain some of this mystery to them. And here I think is where, for me, maybe the story could have went in a different direction, and it would have been a little bit better for a conclusion. It seemed like once they met the people there on the planet, everything just became super duper easy, and the conflict was over. Luckily, you had these two actions up in space going on, but on the planet, things kind of just like came to an end once they met up with the people there. And who they met up with first, of course, was the crew of the ill-fated Starship Independence. So they meet up with like the first officer, I think the doctor, the tactical officer, and they're all up there in years now, some in their 70s, 60s, 50s, and then they notice that there are some humans there that are also definitely younger, some in their 20s, there's even some children there. So it's obvious that they have lived here for a while, and that they've basically, established like a colony there. So they don't give in too much into what's going on there right then, but they jump back up to the space so they can get into the EV mission. And so this is kind of fun. This is when Geordi and Riker now have to wiggle through the vents, and Geordi has got a few of his other tech friends wiggling through the vents as well, all on their way to this airlock with these EV suits so they can go grab a batch of phasers. This is a well done part because I felt like the claustrophobia, I think, of Riker, who was a little bit too big for these, trying to squeeze through them. And I kind of felt like how he was feeling, especially like right in the end when like he was like, he just couldn't take it anymore, and he kind of felt like things were closing in. I know I would not like to do something like that. So, but they're able to make it through to the airlock, meet up with their crew, get all their EV suits on safely, and get off the Enterprise. And they just have to hope basically that no one's looking out a window to see them, flying down to the Independence. So they have to fly down to the Independence, blast a hatch, and get inside. See, and here is where I'm like, this book needs to be longer and bigger because there's so much more that they could do and have fun with here in these last chapters. But that was chapter 10 of this 12-chapter book. And for whatever reason, he just felt he had to wrap it up when, man, he should have dragged us out for another 2 or 3 more chapters here. But the good news is that they are able to discover phasers on the Independence. In addition to the phasers, the Independence storage officer has supplied the place with plenty of extra power cells. So they've got a whole crate full of powered up phasers now, and they're able to fly back, or they prepare to fly back to the Enterprise with their newfound weaponry. At the same time, on the Steerix, Worf and O'Brien and crew have enacted their plan, and they have taken action to basically claim the shuttle bay there. So they've moved everyone into the shuttlecrafts, they've covered the doors with shuttlecrafts, they've taken over the controls for the doors, and they have made their way out of the Steerix. And they've kind of done it in such a way where they have angled themselves where it would be hard for the other ship to take a shot at them without destroying the Enterprise, which of course has some of their crew on it. So they're on their way to the Enterprise at the same time as Riker and crew are spacewalking back to the Enterprise. And it's like the perfect opportunity. They basically go and they open the doors for them and they let them in. And once they let them in, they totally and completely arm them with the new 30-year-old fully charged up phasers ready for action. So now you've got everybody back on the Enterprise ready to reclaim the ship. And they come in, and like there's this kind of when the Romulans first charge in, there's like this smoke and this kind of big area of smoke. That's kind of like how I was imagining. You couldn't really see much. And then this is a grand finale, I guess they wanted to give you. Riker runs into the middle, and he screams out, "Korak!" It's like, "I challenge you," or something like that. And of course, like, Korak's gonna come take the challenge. So this is like the finale. You got like the Romulans on one side armed, and the Federation on the other side armed, with Korak and Riker, throwing down fisticuffs there in the middle to determine what's going to happen. Riker is able to again best Korak, and I think he ends up breaking like one or both of his arms in the fight. Just really kind of shows him up. And it's at this point when, back on the planet, things have fallen apart like more and more for Valek. He's down to like minimal people left, and then Picard sees his moment now. They kind of like when things have like gone like the worst for him, and that's when he sees Valek and kind of like backs away. But that's when he meets up with the inhabitants of the planet, and it turns out that the Ark is not empty at all. There are some 30,000 residents on it, but they are all super advanced telepathic changelings. So like Odo, but like even more advanced, and like basically so advanced that they have total telepathic control. They can read all of your thoughts, and they also can like just basically turn you off and on. So that's what I was kind of saying. It's kind of like it was just an easy ending. At this point, they've taken care of all the Romulans. They're pulling tricks on the Romulans. They got 2 Picards. Or they make one of them turns into like Valek has to look right at himself, and they basically just kind of end everything right there, and that's the whole end of it. The Independence crew explains then. And so they kind of wrap everything up right now, and I'm going to wrap everything up too because I've been talking about this book for nearly 30 minutes now, and I could actually go on for probably another like 15, but I am going to try to put a pin in it because it's been a long talk, but it was a good book, so you can tell when it's a very good book because I will talk about it like this for so long. And again, it felt like like I was watching like a missed episode of TNG. But just maybe another 2-3 more... Maybe... Alright, this ended at 12. Given it 16 chapters, add another element of threat down on the planet before they meet the super like Deus Ex Machina aliens and just fix everything, you know, and maybe like make them less OP. But anyway, the Independence crew explains that they could not leave the place in the first place because once they beamed down, they were infected with something that the what do they call themselves? The ambimorphs. I think I have that right. Didn't know they could give to people. It ended up killing a lot of the Independence crew. They eventually cured it, but because of how bad it was, like that crew has to stay there, and they want to stay there anyway because they've started a family, they've started families, they have a colony there. So the crew of the Independence will stay there on the Ark ship. The Ark ship kind of explained that they came there to do the same thing as Starfleet, reach out, reach new life, and explore the galaxy. When they got there, though, they found the Klingons at war with the Federation, the Romulans there lurking in the shadows, so they didn't want to do anything other than watch. So they actually did send shapeshifter agents back to the Federation in the form of those dead bodies on the shuttle earlier to kind of influence, maybe not influence, but just kind of watch and, make things were going in the right direction for them to meet up with them eventually. So now they're going to do the same thing basically with the Romulans. And they explain that they're going to tow the Steerix and the Independence to another location in the Romulan territory, destroy them both, take the crew of the Steerix aboard the Ark, and go away to another location. The Romulans will think that the Steerix was destroyed in battle because there will be 4 survivors, who are able to escape on a Romulan shuttle. And they will be, like I said, Lord Karok, Lord Dekazanak, and a few others, who will actually be, of course, shapeshifters in disguise. And their shapeshifting is, like, so advanced, like, nobody would ever know. And they're also, like, super telepaths, so, like, they could even just tell everybody, make everybody think what they wanted. So, like, again, like, they're really just, like, overpowered aliens. But they're going to do that. And they state that they're not going to try to, like, change their culture outright, but just maybe try to influence them in the right direction. So in the end, that's how it's all wrapped up. They take them away. The Romulan ship is destroyed. We go into darkness yet again, only to come back into the light. There we are. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this up and say, great book by Simon Hawke. I am excited to see what Blaze of Glory is like, and I will be getting to it in the next 8 TNG novels. And I had so much fun with this, I'm definitely just going to jump right into number 27 and see what that is all about, and then probably, do maybe about 2 or 3 of these before I switch to something a little bit different. So, yeah, that was a good time. So, thank you so much for sitting here and listening to me talk about the Romulan Prize by Simon Hawke for the last 33 minutes and 14 seconds. We are going to stop it here and wish everyone a very good night. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you guys for the next one. Bye.